We identified evidence that the president willfully retained classified materials after the end of his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. We also identified other recorded conversations during which Mr. Biden read classified information aloud to his ghostwriter. My assessment in the report about the relevance of the president's memory was necessary and accurate and fair. Most importantly, what I wrote is what I believe the evidence shows and what I expect jurors would perceive and believe. I did not sanitize my explanation, nor did I disparage the president unfairly.
That was former special counsel Robert Hur defending his report on President Biden's mishandling of classified documents. My next guest, South Carolina Congressman Russell Fry, asked Hur whether some of Biden's classified documents are still missing.
Then Vice President Biden failed to return top-secret, sensitive, compartmented information contents of a classified briefing book from a trip that he took to the Hamptons. And to date, you were unable to determine if these documents were ever recovered. Is that correct?
Correct.
Joining me right now is South Carolina Congressman Russell Fry, himself a member of the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees. Congressman, thanks very much for being here this morning.
Always good to be here.
Why did you press Hur on that particular point?
Well, I think it's important to remember that, you have a senator, Vice President Biden, or Senator Biden, 36 years. He served as 8 years as vice president, had all types of experience handling classified information, but what was really perplexing to me from the report is that while he was vice president, it was so bad that they had to create a special memo for Joe Biden on how to handle classified documents because he kept taking them home. They were missing. He'd take them to the Hamptons. And so even when the special counsel was investigating this, they were unable to determine, and heck, even Joe Biden's staff was unable to determine whether or not all of the materials had been returned.
I don't understand taking them to the Hamptons. In other words, he traveled with them on a trip to the Hamptons. Why?
Correct. I don't know what his purpose was there, but there was some discussions when they interviewed staff, and he absolutely took documents here, there, and everywhere. And the pattern of conduct, I think, is concerning because he really viewed them as his. And Chairman Jordan talked about this yesterday, that he looked at this as a legacy issue, so there was pride here. He looked at this as a financial issue because he was writing a book. Obviously, that was discussed yesterday when he divulged classified information to his ghostwriter. And so, you kind of have this guy that's looking at this going, these are my documents. Well, they don't belong to you. They belong to the government. They belong to the American people, and they're classified for a reason.
Well, I mean, this is all quite stunning. And yet Democrats made the hearing all about former President Trump, claiming that Hur wrote the report to help Trump become president again. Watch this.
And you're doing everything you can do to get President Trump reelected so that you can get appointed as a federal judge or perhaps to another position in the Department of Justice. Isn't that correct?
Congressman, I have no such aspirations.
I want to first see if you will pledge to not accept an appointment from Donald Trump if he is elected again as president.
Congressman, I'm not here to testify
Seems like an easy
about
answer.
what will happen in the future.
President Biden had the mental acuity to navigate this situation. Donald Trump did not.
No, I suggest that you not shape your report for political reasons, which is what you did.
That did not happen, Congressman. That did not happen.
Congressman, this is unbelievable how much politics was thrown into this whole thing. What was your reaction to all of that?
Well, just, what we expect from the Democrats on this is that you distract and make a lot of noise and pound the table and make sure that you can just create some sort of distraction or red herring to look away from what is actually going on. And we know, ultimately I've disagreed with Hur's final decision to not prosecute. But you look at, did he have these classified documents? Yes. Were they secured? No, they were not. They were in his house. They were in tattered boxes in his garage. Did he have these over a long period of time? Yes. Where the special counsel ultimately landed was whether it was willful or not, and he concluded that it was not. I would conclude that it was. When you've got that, I've only been here a year, Maria, but I know that there are certain things that you were supposed to do and not do with classified information. He served 50 years. He knew what he was doing.
Well, Todd Pyro, isn't it extraordinary to you that this is truly a different approach in terms of the two levels of justice? President Trump took documents, but he was president. You're talking about Joe Biden as a senator, and yet they're, on the Democrat side, bringing up Trump.
And to that point, Maria, Congressman, do you think that that should have been more focused on in the line of questioning yesterday, that dichotomy between what Trump could do and what Joe Biden couldn't do based upon the position that he was at the time? Or, Congressman, do you think that would have played right into the Democrat hands by making the hearing about Trump and not 100% about Joe Biden, which technically it was supposed to be about?
No, I think some of that stuff came out yesterday, which I thought was incredibly important, and certainly the American people see it. Look, 3 people have had the nomination for their party since 2016, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump. All 3 of them have had allegations of mishandling classified information, but only one of them has been charged. Americans see this as a 2-tiered system of justice because it is. It is an unequal application of the law, and people are rightly frustrated by it, and they view the attacks on President Trump as political and not necessarily legal in nature.
Well, I mean, we keep saying that, and yet it just keeps happening, right? I mean, is there ever a correction here? Is there ever, something done about it? Let me move on to your work in the House Oversight Committee, because the committee now has subpoenaed AT&T for 15 years of Hunter Biden's phone records. Hunter Biden and his former business partners, Devon Archer, Jason Galanis, and Tony Bobolinsky, all invited to testify publicly next Wednesday. Congressman, what are you expecting to get here?
Well, this is really interesting because obviously if you look at the testimony of Tony Bobolinsky and others, it is inconsistent with what has been testified to with Hunter Biden. So to me, I think this is great. This is where, if you're a lawyer like I am, put all the witnesses in the room and see kind of, where the fissures really are. And so the inconsistencies with Hunter Biden's testimony, I think, are incredibly important. And when you've got his former business associates that are in the room with him, let's find out what the truth is and let the American people see it.
All right, Congressman, we'll be watching that. Thanks very much for being here this morning. Russell Fry joining us.